But one of the things that I'd like to convey is the interesting coordination or the contemporaneous phenomenon of how affordable storage has become. In the year 2000, I believe, it cost about $200 a gigabyte to install and maintain a single gigabyte of enterprise storage. Today, that unit cost is less than a quarter. And so what those top two line items, those top two bullets on this slide reveal is the trend that I think has given rise to so much focus on information governance, certainly in the last half decade. Namely, that when given the choice as a strategically minded CIO or an enterprise-focused chief compliance officer or a particularly knowledgeable and articulate records and information management professional, trying to articulate the rather and often career-limiting move of corralling all the cats into a single unified direction to really focus on information governance properly, countered with the line item budget of adding more storage, well, it's been a fairly easy choice for boards and senior leadership for some time. Now, what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, and what we'll talk about in these remarks, are perhaps the beginning of a change in that tide. Perhaps a beginning of the change in the thinking at that senior leadership level. That maybe it isn't wiser to simply add storage. Maybe it isn't the right course of action long term to meet your regulatory risk and compliance burdens head on. One of the things that's driving toward that epiphany is e-discovery and the rather painful exercise it frequently represents. Another trend that is driving toward that epiphany is that event-driven responses like e-discovery, like data breaches, are forcing that epiphany on companies long before they're ready to face it. And so what we've seen here is the need to be less reactive. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations are discovering that after they're in the firefight. And so when we get to the process-based methodology, part and parcel of it is arming you with enough hard statistics and trends to go back and articulate this discussion. The other is to talk about the benefits of things that most of us in this room sort of know intuitively, that to do things along a written plan are eminently more predictable, more manageable, and more efficient than reacting based on the latest event that's coming in the door, whether that's a regulatory inquiry, whether that's a subpoena, whether that's a whistleblower claim, or whether that's some other triggered event that forces you to go into your environment with incredibly short timelines and incredibly intense pressure to figure things out that properly would take years to derive and make sense of. So for all of these reasons, e-discovery under the gun, information governance under the gun, continues to be expensive and unpredictable. And shockingly, when surveyed, most companies continue to express some serious concerns about their ability to be productively reactive about that. So I'm not going to read these to you. You're all grown-ups. You can read for yourself. But the takeaway from this slide is that this universe is compounding at a ridiculous rate. Just 2 years ago, the survey that talks at the top there about the evolution from 2013 to 2010, just 2 years ago, the metric was 7-fold in that 7-year period. So in 2 years, the metric has changed. But take a look at that. 44 trillion. That means your digital footprint, as it exists today, will double in less than 2 calendar years. Does that mean that you're creating eminently more valuable content? Maybe. But we'll talk a little later on about how much of that is, in fact, to coin a phrase from, or to steal a phrase from AIM, a digital landfill, and what companies are doing to sift through that proactively, to truly delete the things they no longer need, so that when they are hit with the triggering event, for which participation is not optional, they have the ability to go into that environment, understand it, winnow the haystack to something very manageable, and pull the needles out accordingly. And we'll talk about a process by which you can achieve that.